Thank you so much for joining me in this teaching. I want to quickly teach on a topic that is dear to my heart. And for me, it is a foundational teaching of my ministry. God gave me a ministry, Menorah Transformation Church, and the essence is to bring people to the place of transformation, leading to having dominion in the 7 mountains of influence. There are places of influence that God gave us to exercise dominion. When God was about to leave this world, He called His disciples and He empowered them. He said, go into the world and preach. And in Genesis chapter 1, verse 27, when man was created, the activating, infusing injection that God deposited in man was have dominion. Be fruitful, have dominion. So the essence of transformation is to have dominion upon the face of the earth. You are not here to be dominated. You are not here to be subdued by the forces of this world and the forces of darkness. You are here to have dominion. But there can never be dominion without what I call transformation, because transformation is foundational to exercising dominion upon the face of the earth. Something happened to me. I encountered somebody one day, and I was conversing with the person. The person told me that they don't believe in God. And I discovered that even as a man called and anointed by God, I had no weapon in my arsenal to defend God, to speak in the name of God, and to defend His kingdom. So it's not necessarily being apologetic, but it's important to understand that for you to speak for somebody, you have to know the person. And you have to equally go back and understand the background of that person. Just imagine you are a lawyer, an attorney, and somebody has a case in the court, and you are called to defend the person, and you absolutely know nothing about the person. That is, I think, madness at its apogee. So it's important that a man that must speak for God, a man that will speak in the name of God, should know that God, not only spirit, not only from encounter, but from the place of revelation, and equally going back to know what the fathers of faith knew about God, what they have written about God, what is there. So it's important for us to go out of our skin, out of the way, to find God from history, from philosophy, from mythology, and to create a system of understanding where we can have clarity about God. So I'm teaching about what I title the origin of gods and God. Now, for me, for you to have a proper understanding of God, who God is, you equally have to understand who gods were or who gods are. I have read the Bible carefully, and I discovered that the Bible did not negate the existence of other spirits aside from God. The Bible did not, speak of only one God. The Bible spoke of many gods. So how did these gods come into existence? How did we have gods? And how did we have God? I'm not going to waste much time on etymology of the word God, because there is a hypothesis I will present. that that which has no name, or that which does not exist has no name. And if I start my teaching from that perspective, that which does not exist has no name, it therefore means that anything that does not exist within the consciousness of man, within the intellect, within the, the scope of man, the scope of mass knowledge, that thing cannot have a name. So whatever that exists, and the existence it could be in physicality or in spiritual, whether it is spiritual existence or physical existence, material existence, whatever that the mind of man is able to capture, the mind of man is able to name. Whatever the minds of men capture, that is what the minds of men named. And that which the minds of men couldn't capture, the minds of men couldn't name. And that is why there are many things that the minds of men, the scientific, the technological disposition of men could not capture. And the moment they are able to capture that thing, they give that thing a name. When God created everything, the Bible says he brought Adam and he presented everything to Adam. And everything that was presented to Adam, Adam gave them names. But the ones that were not presented to him, he couldn't name them. And subsequently, when men started interfacing with nature, they began to discover some things that existed outside of their scope. And then they began to name it. So when an object is given names across different cultures, across different civilizations, across ages, across millenniums, then it therefore means that it might not authenticate the existence of that thing, but it authenticates the reality of that thing, that thing is something that we should give our attention to its investigation. If we speak or we have things like dog, and a dog is given name in China, given name in Russia, given name in Africa, in Nigeria, in Congo, in Kiswahili, in South Africa, in Namibia, in Botswana, a dog is given specific name according to how the society observes features of dog. Because there are certain things that have a particular name, and the name is based on the nature of that thing. It is based on the nature of that thing. For instance, I was named Victor by my parents, but it was not given to me as a result of, or as a function of a nature. I didn't fight any battle. I didn't win any war. So there was no need of naming me Victor, because I didn't fight a war. I didn't win any battle. So if for someone to be Victor, he has to go through a process. So there are animals that their names are descriptive in nature. Their names are not just given to them based on who they are. The names are descriptive of their nature, of a particular character, of a particular quality in them. And that is why when we see a man that is bold and fearless, we say, this man is a lion. It doesn't mean that the man is a lion as an animal, but there is a nature in him that resonates with what men have noticed about lion. When somebody can see clearly, say, this person has eyes of an eagle, it doesn't mean that his eyes are, no, but it's the nature that was displayed. It was a character, it was a quality that was displayed by the person that made us to come to that conclusion to say he has eyes of an eagle. He said somebody is a pig, somebody is a dog. Then we look at the qualities of a dog, nature of a dog, and then we attribute it to the person. So, in all cultures of this world, in all civilizations of this world, you see each of them giving names to God and equally names to other lesser spiritual beings and entities across cultures, across civilizations. And I stand to be corrected, but I believe that there is no society on earth that doesn't have religious background. Even Russia, even China, even North Korea, there were times in the history of their evolution that they were very religious before the rise of global atheism as a result of communism, Marxism, Stalinism, and Maoism. So especially the rise of communism. Because of, colonialism and nations trying to break the yoke of domination, imperialism, colonialism. So people began to look at, the Bible and saying that it encouraged slavery. But it is not so in entirety. That's a subject for another day. But not to deviate from this background that I'm giving, there are things I've written down, and I'm going to look at them carefully. But I'm going to assure you that this is a teaching that you have to sit down carefully and listen, because I am going to deploy the tools I was given when I was a literature student. I was raised to be a critic. I was equally raised to be a researcher. And when I was in the university, I studied poetry, and especially classical literature. And in my studies, I think I encountered a professor, Amechi Akwanya. And, meeting him gave me the platform to study more of classical literature. And I discovered that in classical time, literature originated from religious culture, religious civilization of the ancient world, because literature itself and poetry, the religion and poetry started from the same origin, started from the same time, because men were trying to interpret the environment. Men were trying to understand the world they found themselves in. No technology to help them to solve some complex problems that we are using technology to solve today. So when they encounter the sea, raging ocean, they encounter desert storm, they encounter night and death, life and death, they encounter night and day, they couldn't understand the reality of their existence. So they started, trying to placate, trying to appease the environment, because most of the spirits, most of the gods, most of the deities, now I am delving into the origin of gods, most of them were naturalistic in nature, were environmental spirits, like the god of the sun, the god of the moon, the god of water, the god of this, the god of war, of harvest. So there were different spirits and deities that people believe that if we appease this spirit, A, B, and C will happen to us. But even in the Bible, 2 times there was interface between men and spirits. Number one was in Genesis chapter 6, verse 1, where some spirits left heaven and came down to the earth, have affairs with the son, with the daughters of men, and gave birth to another species who were very mighty and giant upon the face of the earth, the Nephilims. And it seems to me some of these people survived down to the days of Goliath, down to the days of the land of Canaan. These were the Nephilims that the children of Israel said, we were like grasshopper in our own sight in their presence. We cannot conquer them because they had advanced intelligence, advanced civilization. So, we in the book of Revelation chapter 12, we equally saw a war in heaven. And the Bible says that the war started in heaven. Angel Michael, Angel Gabriel and his own people fought against Satan, Lucifer and his own angels, and they were cast upon the face of the earth. And I tend to believe that equally served as the basis for environmental spirits and demons that we have today, and equally in the time past, because some of them, we don't know where they fell. Some fell into the ocean, some fell upon the land, some fell in the forest, some fell in the desert, some fell in the mountain, some fell in the farmland. So as they fell in different places, they began to manifest themselves. I tend to believe that these spirits begin to manifest themselves to these people because every religion is revelational. Every religion is revelational. It is philosophy that is men searching for God. But religion, it is God searching for men. For God so loved the world that he sent his only begotten son. If you go to the Quran, for instance, you will see that it was believed that I don't subscribe to Islam, but it's also a religion and it has God. It has a God. And they say that Muhammad went to a cave and a spirit came to him. He didn't go to the spirit. It was the spirit that came to him. Moses did not go to any spirit. It was the spirit that came to Moses in the form of a burning bush. So every religion is revelational. It is a spirit searching for humanity. It is divinity coming to humanity to establish contact. And when the contact is established, then it is humanity that now begins to depend and return to the spirit or to divinity. It's a two-way traffic. The divine comes first, and then the finite returns to divine. Now, that is many religions, in fact, many pastors today. Some will say, I was fasting and the spirit came, a being came, a divine came. So religion is revelational. Philosophy, it is human mind searching, inquiring for the divine. But religion, it is the divine searching for men. A time came in the book of Genesis chapter 10. The men, 10 or 11, men gathered and they started building tower to heaven. And what happened? The divine came. The divine came to Moses. The divine came to Jeremiah. The divine came to Ezekiel. The divine came to Job. The divine came to Jonah. The divine came to. So every religion is an expression of interface between the divine and mortality, between immortality and mortality, between the infinite and the finite. So I stand by this, Now, we have two instances where spirit came to man and the spirit interfaced with man. So, one, even in the book of Jude, the Bible says a place is reserved. Some of these spirits, and even in Revelation, some of them are so wicked that they were not allowed to roam upon the face of the earth. They are terrible that God did not allow them to roam. Satan is allowed to roam. That's why in the book of Job, there was a Satan, where are you coming from? He said, I have moved to and fro. And then said, be careful of Satan, who moved to and fro, seeking for whom to devour. So Satan is allowed to roam. There are other demons, other spirit deities that rebel with Satan, who were cast upon the face of the earth. Some of them fell in the river, in the ocean, in the desert, and they took over those territories. They took over those territories and they made those territories their habitation. I think even in the book of Ezekiel or Joel or Ezekiel or Jeremiah, let's look at the book of Ezekiel chapter 29 verse number 22. Ezekiel 29 verse number 22. He said, son of man, set your face towards Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Now take note of this. Set your face towards Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and prophesy against him and against all of Egypt. Speak and say, thus saith the Lord, behold, I am against you, Pharaoh, king of Egypt, the great monster that lies in the midst of the rivers. The great monster that lies in the midst of the river, boastfully declaring, my Nile is my own, and I have made it for myself. Now, so it therefore means that that's what the Bible says, I will judge the gods of Egypt. It therefore means that there was a king that is behind the king of Egypt. There was a monarch that is ahead of the monarch of Egypt, the prince of Persia that hijacked in Daniel 10 verse 1. He hijacked an angel coming down with answer to prayer. So there was a prince of Persia. There was a king of Egypt. And his name is Pharaoh. He said, behold, I am against you, Pharaoh, king of Egypt, that great monster that lies in the midst of his rivers, boastfully declaring, my Nile, that's the habitation of this darkness, of this demon. So when Egyptians go to the river to make sacrifice in the ancient world, they were not foolish. They know what they were doing. Because there must be an encounter, because every spirit is searching for a worshiper. Spirits like worship. But there are those, especially the fallen ones, who came from heaven. Once men fall to worship, they said, no, don't worship me. But if they were fallen angels, they would have started looking for worship. That's why Satan came to Jesus and said, bow down and worship me. Spirits always look for worshipers. He said, I will put hooks in your jaws, and I will make the fish of your rivers to stick to your scale, and I will pull you off from the midst of your rivers, and all the fish of your rivers will stick to your scale. These fishes are not just normal fish. They are the demons, the lesser spirits that inhabit the river, that control the river. So I'm going to pull out of all of you together by the hook and cast you out of the river. There are three things that you have to take note of. What is God? Who is God? But the etymology of the word God is what I'm not going to go into it, because you can take your dictionary and check the etymology of the word God. But I want to give you some perspectives on God. And there are 4 perspectives on the study of God. You're going to study God and gods. There are 3 perspectives. I am starting with gods because the time will come that I'm going to, from there, we are going to migrate to the study of God. But you see, I was saying initially that in my studies of classical literature, something happened. I was exposed to poetry and exposed to writers like Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, Thales, and so many of them. They wrote so many things. But if we are going to study God, we have to go beyond the Greece or the Grecian civilization to the Mesopotamian civilization, where we have the Sumerian civilization where Abraham came out of. But you must understand that the Sumerian civilization is older than the Greece or the Greek civilization. And the Egyptian civilization is equally older than the Grecian civilization, because there are many philosophers that left Athens to Egypt to study philosophy, like Thales and others. I think even Pythagoras, they had to come to Africa, to Egypt, to study philosophy, went back and developed their own philosophical culture. So, but let me start with the, 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 the poetry I was talking about. In literature, we have drama, we have prose, and we have poetry. All of them started at the same time. But prose is more of a later development. Poetry and drama, they started the same time. In fact, like the tragic drama, for instance, there is what we call Dionysus. And in the worship of Dionysus, who was like a god of fertility, the people gather together, they have some performances, and then offer sacrifices to the deity, and some performances, and then life continues. So from there, some philosophers like Socrates, Plato, Aristotle started developing poetics and theory around these cultural, religious festivals. We got to create theories about them. And in the Republic by Plato, and then in Poetics by Aristotle, we see that contention where Plato banished the poet. But Aristotle, who was a student of Plato, looked at the poetry as an object and started studying it as a literary object. And that was where he discovered the elements, the structures that constituted that object. Now, that was the beginning. So you can discover that even literature itself, philosophy itself, started by men trying to understand this thing that these people are worshiping. What is this thing? And the system, the structure that people are using to worship this spirit. What's the benefit to humanity, to society? What are the benefits of these things? They began to think, they began to inquire into all these things. So we have monotheism, we have polytheism, we have pantheism, and then we have atheism. These are isms that are very important for us to understand if we must have a clear knowledge and understanding of the study of God. Before we go to the nature of God, we have to understand the kinds of studies that are there, the kinds of gods that operate. Many societies started as polytheistic society, have many gods. God of the sun and of the moon, of the water, of this. But something stands out. In all of this civilization of society, there is another God. Every society that has the tradition of worshiping spirits, there is always one spirit that has the attribute of the eternal God, the God with the big G. No matter the culture, no matter the society, there is always one that stands out, that the nature of that one is always a mystery. So, polytheism in traditions like Greek mythology or certain forms of Hinduism and animism, they feature multiple deities and each governing a specific space, aspect of nature, aspect of human life, like fertility, death, or possessing individual consciousness. And in many of these ancient traditions, gods, sometimes they are like human spirit. And that is equally why I tend to believe that when Satan and his angel fell upon the face of the earth, they fall or they fell across cultures, societies, and time. And that is why, if you look at the nature of human mythology, there are people that study myth. They discover recurring patterns. People like Carl Jung, they discover patterns across the myth of nations. They discover recurring pattern, similarity. If you talk about the destruction of the world by flood of Noah, many society have similar stories apart from the Bible. Across cultures, across continents, across societies, you can find the mythology of the great deluge, where the world was destroyed by a flood, and then a being came and started a new life. And we equally have this in Yoruba, in Nigeria. It should be Obatala. Is it Obatala? I stand to be corrected here. That he came down from the earth, the world was covered with mud, and with a shell, is it with a chicken or and he poured sand, and the chicken covered the sand with the earth, and then he began to create things. So many cultures. Is it Epic of Gilgamesh? You will see a similar story. And some will say, this is a reality. Until today, there are histories of people discovering things in the ocean. People wrote about Atlantis as an ancient country, Atlantis, where the Atlantic Ocean is today. Many believe that the Atlantic Ocean occupies a part of the earth that was covered by the great deluge. So you discover that so many cultures and civilizations across continents, that continent that were divided by water, you will see similarity of worship. You will see altars raised to divinities in Peru, in Mexico, in Americas, in Africa, in China, in Asia, in Middle East. You will go to different countries, you will see altars, similarity of worship, similarity of stories of creation, similarity of deities, different spirits, God of the moon, God of the sun. And if you study the pattern and the nature of these gods, they are almost the same. The God of the sun worshipped in Egypt, and the attribute of the God of the sun worshipped by the Canaanites and other Semitic nations, they are almost the same. Many societies were polytheistic in nature, like the Sumerian societies, the Greek society civilization, Egyptian civilizations. Even Apostle Paul met that polytheistic civilization in his encounters with the Gentiles, with the Roman Empire. He met those civilizations. He met those polytheistic system, but There was a divinity that Apostle Paul encountered, and that divinity Apostle Paul took interest in. Now let us see the book of Acts of Apostles, chapter number 17, verse 16. Acts of Apostles 17, verse number 16. While Paul was waiting for them in Athens, Athens is an important city. That was the birthplace, not really sure, but it was the birthplace of philosophy, of the Western philosophy. Do you even know why God chose or selected Paul to be his spokesperson to the Gentiles? Because Paul was also a philosopher. Peter, John, they couldn't handle this mission. They can't handle this mission because of their background. And that is equally why I know that what I am teaching today, I am able to teach it because of my background in literature, in classical studies. Now, he said he was greatly distressed to see that the city was full of idols. So he reasoned in the synagogue with both Jews and God-fearing Greeks, as well as in the marketplace day by day with those who happened to be there. These are the schools that were started by people like Socrates, philosophical schools of Socrates, schools of Aristotle, schools of Plato. They existed till the days of Jesus. From the classical time till the days of Jesus. That's what we call them, the Greco-Roman civilization. So the Bible says a group of Epicurean and Stoic philosophers. Look at it. And we are going to go back to Epicurean and the Stoicism. They were able to capture the nature of God from the nature of gods. So men were able to use philosophy to assess some aspect of God. Men, the Greek civilization, the Sumerian, Mesopotamian civilization, they were able to use philosophy to search for God, and they were able to find aspects of God, just the same way that Moses was able to see an aspect of God. Only the background of God. They couldn't see the totality of Christ the way we have it today. They couldn't have that totality. So the Bible says the Stoic philosophers began to debate with him. Some of them ask, what is this babbler saying? These are philosophers. So it takes a man that was trained by Gamaliel to confront them. That is why there are many pastors in Africa are not trained to confront this kind of people. African, the way we do our religion is very emotional. Is very emotional religion. And that is why God has to send people that can handle emotions of Jerusalem, emotions of Israel, people that are able to. A time came that Peter was with Apostle Paul, and he was withdrawing himself from the Gentiles. Apostle Paul spoke to him. Don't do that. Don't do that. So you discover that these people are philosophers with a history of philosophy. These are philosophers with history of philosophy. The Epicureans and the Stoics, or Epicureanism and Stoicism, these are rival Hellenistic philosophers, school of thought that offer distinct, different paths to good life. The Stoics, they pursue virtue, rationality, and duty to society, while Epicureans seek tranquility and the minimization of pain simply through deliberate living. So you discover that both schools emerged in ancient Greece around the late 4th and 13th centuries BC, but they provide entirely different frameworks for navigating the world. Now let's look at so that we can go back to see the kind of people that Apostle Paul was confronting their theology. They are not, these are people that from the ancient time, their ancestors study society, nature, philosophy, history. They study science. They study everything, because philosophy in its earliest form is the study of everything called knowledge. Every arms of knowledge, you study it, from politics, philosophy, history, sociology, everything. They study it. This is the society that Apostle Paul is here to confront their theology. You have to study Apostle Paul to understand the job that this man did to the body of Christ. And that was why he was singled out. The Stoicism, they focus on virtue and duty, founded by Zeno of Centrum, and famously championed by later Roman thinkers like Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius. So Stoicism emphasized logic, emotional resilience, and active participation in civic duty. Now look at three things that they hold very dear. The highest good, that is, and this nature is equally an aspect of God's morality. Because you can't talk of morality and conscience without talking about a power that is beyond humanity to supply that intelligence. So, virtue is the only true good, and one should act in accordance with the universal logos. With the universal logos. We are going to come to that. What is that universal logos? That humans, the Stoics, were able to discover the universal logos. So therefore, that is why you see many people taught their way to God. There are many people that set out to debunk the Bible rationally, and in trying to do that, they were able to meet God, able to meet Christ. So, number two, faith controls everything. Stoics practice accepting things they cannot control, because they came to a conclusion that there is a force outside of existence that controls things, and we cannot contend with that force, so they surrender to that force. And what is that faith? What is that force outside of time, outside of humanity, outside of human society? What is that faith? They had to surrender to faith. So dividing the world into what is up to them and what is not. There is a part of this world that is a mystery, and the secret things belong to God. The ones he reveals belong to the sons of men. You can see that they have discovered God there, that there is a mystery to life. And then number three, community. Stoics believe in a duty to the broader human community. Love your neighbor as you love yourself, and generally deeply engage in public and political life. Now let us look at the Epicureans. It was founded by Epicurus and expanded by the Roman poet Lucretius. Epicurean equate the highest good with atazeria or atarazia. That is tranquility, peace of mind. My peace I give unto you, not as the world giveth. My peace I give unto you. The Prince of Peace. They were able to discover some aspects of God, but they couldn't discover his totality. And aponia, the absence of physical pain. Now, the highest good, while others stereotype as hedonism. It is actually about a life of moderation. Epicureans distinguish between natural and necessary desires like friendship and simple food, and empty desires like wealth and fame. Able to this, and if you go to the Bible, go to the book of Proverbs, you will see all these things. You see all these things. Now, physics, because it's not physics, they subscribe to a materialistic atomism. They do not believe in an overarching divine providence or an afterlife, viewing the universe as a product of randomly colliding atoms. So you discover that atheism itself came from this kind of thought. But it does not negate the fact that they also come to conclusion of morality. There's an aspect of morality that they were able to capture by means of human reasoning. And they equally talk about community. They favor a quiet, withdrawn life away from the stress of politics, often retreating to private communities like the garden to spend time with close friends. And it is so, despite their differing approaches, both schools, they recognize that humans suffer from psychological anxiety due to misplaced desires and fear. Fear not, for I am with you. Both emphasize the importance of mindfulness, self-sufficiency, and deep introspection. So that is an aspect that I want you to take note of. Then let us go to monotheism. Monotheism, religion like Christianity, Islam, Judaism, believe in a single, all-knowing, all-powerful, and all-loving God who exists outside of time and space. In Christianity, this is often understood as the Trinity: God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. I'm going to take my time to break this through. Then let's go to pantheism. Pantheism or panentheism. Panentheism, some philosophical views hold that God and the universe are one and same, or that God is the divine energy that interconnects and encompasses all materials. So just like the romantics the romantic poets who see God in the universe. And then we have atheism or agnosticism. Atheism is the belief that no deities exist. For me, it's just the rejection of the divine. While agnosticism is the position that the existence of God is either unknown or inherently unknowable by human mind. The human mind cannot know God. So that is more or less like skepticism. But let me tell you this. In every culture of this world and civilization, human beings have searched for God through 3 channels. How many channels? 3 channels of searching for the divine. Either the divine searching for men or men searching for the divine. But 3 interfaces, point of interface, point of connection. Number 1 is mythology. Mythology. And this came from the ancients who encounter. See, if you want to see what you have never seen before, go on a ship, cruise ship into the sea. Even the Bible says those that go down into the sea, they see the wonders of God. Those that go into the deep, the waters, the ocean, they see the wonders of God. So imagine the ancient traveling upon the sea, seeing different ways. Poseidon, they say, this is Poseidon. They saw different is tempest. They see the nature roaring against man. They see earthquake. They see tsunami. They see different natural disasters at its infantile stage. that there is nothing that man has available to contend with them. What do you think this kind of people will do? And they found themselves in a world they have no ability to control. We have controlled the earth to a large extent. We have dominated the earth to a large extent. And that is equally the reason why we were created, to dominate. Either in science, in philosophy, in art, in culture, any way that the earth is dominated meaningfully and tapping from the resources of the earth, of the space. That is the reason why God created us. So, stories about divinity, stories about deities, stories about things that human mind cannot interpret, cannot explain. It was a means of the imagination of man to interpret his spiritual environment. So to me, mythology is like the human mind, the human imagination, trying to understand the unknowable, try to understand mysteries that surround man. And number two, philosophy is the human reasoning, human intellect, reflecting upon hard questions, reflecting and searching for God. Because let me tell you this, mythology can also lead men to the divine. Because by the end of all these stories, your imagination comes to its limit, then you know the limitation of your humanity. When your mind gets to the limit, who created God? Who created the person that created the person that created God? If God created man and men created machines, then who created God? And who created the creator of the creator of the creator of the creator of the ad infinitum? There is a limit that your mind will crack. And it is that mind, when the minds of men reach that level, then they make a U-turn against every system that has established human reasoning for thousands of years and begin to question the foundation that even produced their thought. The foundation that produced their reasoning, their intellect, their morality, their sense of existence, from mythology, from philosophy, from science, psychology, everything over generation, from cosmology, every work of human intellect trying to search everything that God has created. You come to a point, begin to question. It is just like a house that is questioning its existence. Just like a house that is questioning its existence. Am I a house? So, the third one is religion. A religion is the opposite of mythology and philosophy. Religion, philosophy, and mythology, they are earth going upward. It is he that comes from above that knows all things. So the earth, as we rise in intellect, our imagination rise. So we look at environment, we look at the ocean, we look at society, we look at things we cannot explain, then we use our imagination. And then man proceeded from imagination and storytelling to the intellect, to the mind, trying to unravel deep questions, because every mythology also leaves unanswered questions. And the truth of the matter is that every philosophy also leaves so many unanswered questions. Then religion comes. Religion becomes light, becomes revelation. It is the unknown trying to give a glimpse, try to answer some of the questions. Go to the book of Job, you will see this thing in play. Job and his three friends, they began to philosophize God. But at last, the divine had to come to show them an aspect of the divine. clearly in the book of Job. So in the book of Job, we saw mythology, we saw philosophy, and then it ended with religion, with God coming to unravel some of them. He said, can you put a hook on the Leviathan and pull it? Can you put a hook on the nose of the Leviathan and pull it? So many, the divine began to show. But many of the part of Job existed. That's like so many stories. This one we tell a story, we come to a point that we hook, they will not know how to proceed. I think there's one of them that was the youngest. I love the way he spoke. He said, I am the youngest among you, but I know that the spirit of the ancient is upon me. And he began to philosophize about life, about divinity, about deity, about everything. All of them came to the point and they couldn't understand why do bad things happen to good people. They couldn't break through. And you know what? For God to maintain his mystery, he equally did not tell Job why he suffered bad things, even though he was a good man. So, atheism is a deviation from the natural human quest for interface with divinity. God has planted it in the heart of men to search for him. And across ages, across generations, that has been ongoing. And equally, atheism cannot stop the search for God. It is a burden that God has placed upon the minds of men. So gods existed even in the Bible. We see instances, we see stories in the Bible that sometimes we don't take account of. So just like in Genesis chapter 4 verse 1, that was when angels started marrying daughters of men and having affairs with them. And if you look at most of the gods that the Greek worship, they were God men or men God. They were human and gods. They have that interface, have that connection. And in Genesis chapter 6 verse 1, we saw human and angels coming together to have interface. So let's look at mythology. Mythology basically focuses on the origin of divinities. And in this context, it is polytheistic in nature, polytheism. And then if you proceed to Mesopotamia, in Greek, we have instances, stories of gods, humans, and gods. That's why we have like Zeus. Zeus is a deity. And it's like a god man, a man god. And in their description in ancient pictures and artworks, you see them in human forms. Even Oceanian, is it Oceanus, the goddess, the god of the ocean, it's like a human being. So you see the pictures of these deities in human form. And they believe that they control aspects of nature, aspect of environment. Now, in Yoruba mythology, I've spoken earlier, we have deities like Obatala, the god of harvest or something. We have Shango, the god of thunder. We have Ogun, the god of iron. So now, in all ancient cultures and societies, we have stories of creation. We have stories of deities and gods. These gods, some of them, they have beginning and end. These gods in the ancient mythology, they fight each other. They kill each other and take over kingdom, take over territories, even take over wives. So they have the semblance. They have the semblance of what happened in the book of Genesis chapter 6 verse 1, where angels came to the earth, married daughters. But the Bible did not give us a total glimpse of how these angels were able to navigate with their wives. So it therefore means that when the wife of a human marry a divine being, have an affair with that being, you don't expect that woman to be normal again. She must carry an aspect of the divine being, because two shall become one flesh. So it is clear that if you look at ancient mythology, we have many female divinities, female deities, female spirits. Many of them. Even in the Bible, we see example of female deities, female divinities. So the question is, how did they come into existence? And we equally see example of marriage and deities having children, like in Egyptian mythology. You see that, is it Horus, Oris, and the other one, the three of them, husband, wife, and son. They're like deity, three triumph deity. So you see these similarities in ancient mythologies, whereby gods marry, they procreate, they give birth to children. But where they live, they call it in Greek mythology Olympus. They live in a place called Olympus, and they are the Olympians. So with this kind of situation now, we may tend to assume that some of these spirits, angels, that came upon the face of the earth and married daughters of men to themselves, the daughters of men became so, because don't forget, when Moses went up to the mountain and had interface with God, he came back and he was turned into a deity himself. So imagine that a daughter of man sleeping with an angel, with a spirit. When the woman comes back, both she and the child and the spirit that slept with her, they cannot be normal again. So it could be in that context that we have females rising up and behaving like their husbands, or their husbands imparting them with knowledge and with deposit that makes the women to rise up to the level of deityship, to be goddesses upon the face of the earth. Because imagine that an angel comes in his angelic form, sleep with a daughter of man, give birth to abnormal children, giants who are very terrible. Imagine where they're going to live. They will not be living among normal men. They may have a mountain where they go and stay there. And people that interface with them handed over stories to generations. And a generation came and said, there are people called the Olympians. They are gods. They are this. We worship them. Because imagine that angels came, give birth to children. The angels must be giant to give birth to giant children. That's number one. And the daughters, that the women that they marry, they must have impacted them. They must have, infused in them. Just imagine the wife of a giant man, how she is going to treat other people. You are the most powerful man in this community. Just imagine how your wife is going to treat other non-powerful people in the community. That could be the origin of these spirits that are female and male in nature. That could be. And it is captured in different cultures, different societies. If you see these deities, they are portrayed as giant, as non-human. They have element that is both human and non-human. So, but these gods are finite, they die, they fight. over territory, over land, over women. They fight. And most often they came out of chaos and bring order. So every important aspect of human lives is mediated and governed by a particular deity or deities or gods. That is how it was. So imagine that you have a giant and they may have supernatural attributes. When you want to go to your farm, they will come physically or spiritually and block you. Say, if after you are harvest, you must bring a percentage to me. And eventually they became gods upon the face of the earth. And number three, there is rivalry, competition among gods, and there are structured and rigid systems of praying, of appeasing, of placating the gods whom they angered. So there was a system of placating the spirits that has been transmitted and transferred from generation to generation. How did it come into existence? This could be as a result of what I've been describing. So we observe that in the ancient world, the idea or concept of gods was primarily an origination of animism. God's creation of animism. People worshiping animals, worshiping deities, worshiping environmental things, and the human desire to personify nature, to personify natural forces. So people explain the unpredictable world that they found themselves, like storms, harvest, sickness, death, by attributing this phenomena to conscious supernatural beings. If there's success in farming, they ascribe it to a deity. If there is failure, if there is drought, there is famine. If their animals die of some diseases that this generation, this is what we are able to find solution to, they ascribe all blessing, curses, good, bad, light, day, everything to the spiritual, to spirits. And some of these spirits could be represented in animal form or as man. So they have different kinds of them. But over time, these local spirits evolved into complex pantheons of deities, other pantheons of deities, hierarchy of deities that govern specific human domains and societal roles. They play different societal roles, occupy different domains in politics. There's a specific deity you placate, a deity for knowledge, deity for this. So they, over time, in the beginning, they were just normal, This is when there is a drought, you go, you placate the spirit, but eventually they became a complex system, structured, that in a community you have more than 10, more than 20. In fact, I'm talking to you today in India. So we are saying they have more than 1,000 deities. Some say more than 5,000 divinities. 5,000 divinities in only one country. So the origin of these deities varied widely by region and culture, with the most defining pantheons emerging in the Near East and the Mediterranean. So in the Middle East, in Eastern countries, we have so many civilizations that emerged with different stories and histories of how deities came into existence. Let's start with Mesopotamia. Mesopotamia. Gods began as localized deities controlling specific cities, like Inanna. There's a poem we read in the university, hymn to Inanna. Okay, this is a hymn to Inanna. It was a poem that I studied in the university. It said, Lady of all powers, in whom light appears, radiant one, beloved of heaven and earth, tiara crowned priestess of the highest God, with a G. My lady, you are the guardian of all greatness. Your hand holds the seven powers. You live the powers of being. You have hung them over your finger. You have gathered the many powers. You have clasped them now like necklace onto your breast. Like a dragon, you poison the land. When you roar at the earth, in your thunder, nothing green could live. Take note. A flood fell from the mountain. You, Inanna, foremost in heaven and earth, lady riding a beast. You rain fire on the heads of men, taking your power from the highest, following the commands of the highest, lady of the great rights. Who can understand all this is yours? In the forefront of the battle, all is struck down by you, O winged lady. Like a bird, you scavenge the land. Like a charging storm, you charge. Like a roaring storm, you roar. You thunder in thunder, snort in rampaging winds. Your feet are continually restless, carrying your harps of sighs. You breathe out the music of morning. This is a hymn. It was in your service that I first entered the holy temple. I and Hedwana, that's the priestess now, the highest priestess. I carried the ritual basket. I chanted your praise. I have been cast out to the place of lepers. Day comes and the brightness is hidden around me. Shadows cover the light, drapes it in sandstorms. My beautiful mouth knows only confusion. Even my sex is doxed. What once was chanted of Nana, let it now be yours. There was a deity called Nana. He said, what was once chanted of Nana, let it now be yours. That you are as lofty as heaven. Let it be known that you are as wide as the earth. Let it be known that you devastate the rebellious. Let it be known that you roar at the land. Let it be known that you rain your blows on their heads. Let it be known that you feast on corpses like a dog. Let it be known that your glance is lifting towards them. Let it be known that your glance is like striking lightning. Let it be known that you are victorious. Let it be known that this is not said of Nana, it is said of you. This is your greatness. You alone are the high one. Oh, my lady, behold, beloved of heaven, I have told your fury truly. Now that her priestess has returned to her place, Inanna's heart is restored. The day is auspicious. The priestess is clothed in beautiful robes, in womanly beauty, as if in the light of the rising moon. The gods have appeared in their rightful places. The door seal of heaven cries, hail! Praise to the destroyer endowed with power, to my lady enfolded in beauty. Praise to Inanna. Do you know why I take my time to read this poem? For you to see that this poem was written thousands of years ago. Was written thousands of years ago. But it was to a deity called Inanna. And before the deity Inanna, there was another deity called Nana. So this is a priestess chanting the praise of this spirit. We can't talk about God without going through this historical system, historical seasons. Because we discover that the Stoics, there was an aspect of God that they discover. When I read about the Stoics, I am not sure if we pointed out what Apostle Paul discovered. But let me go back to that, to the Stoic, because when Apostle Paul was in Athens, he met some philosophers and they began to debate. Some of them asked, "What is this babbler saying?" Others remarked, "He seems to be advocating foreign gods." They said this because Paul was preaching the good news about Jesus and the resurrection. Then they took him and brought him to a meeting of the Areopagus or Pagos, where they said to him, "May we know what this new teaching is that you are presenting? You are bringing some strange ideas to our ears, and we would like to know what they mean." All the Athenians and the foreigners who live there spend their time doing nothing but talking about and listening to the latest ideas. It was a city. Their work is philosophy. The work of Athenians was philosophy. New ideas. Paul then stood up in the meeting of the Areopagus or Pagos and said, "People of Athens, I see that in every way you are very religious. For as I walk around and look carefully at your objects of worship, I even found an altar with the inscription to an unknown God." The big G. It was an altar that was raised, but to a God that was not known. So, you are ignorant of the very thing that you worship. And this is what I am going to proclaim to you. These are philosophers. They are not like you that you will have money tomorrow. Amen. If you can shout the loudest amen, it will happen to you. And you have been shouting amen. No, there is a level to which you have to follow God and know what you are doing. Let's go. The God who made the world and everything in it is the Lord of heaven and the earth, and does not live in temples built by human hands. And he is not served by human hands as if he needed anything. Rather, he himself gives everyone life and breath and everything else. For one man, he made all the nations that they should inhabit the whole earth. And he marked out their appointed times in history and the boundaries of their lands. God did not do this so that they will ask him or they will seek him. And God did this so that they will seek him and perhaps reach out for him and find him. Though he is not far from any one of us, God is not far. There are things that God did to be as a basis for human to search, to reach out to him. And will you say that these people did not do that? They did it. But the means, the process they follow, it is where there was a problem. Don't forget, Socrates died trying to tell them that these deities you are worshiping is not the right thing. Just the same way that Paul was preaching to them, that was the same way that Socrates tried to warn his people about the deities they are worshiping. But he encountered troubled waters. Though he is not far from anyone, for in him we live and move and have our being. As some of your own poets have said, we are his offsprings. This is Apostle Paul quoting a Gentile philosopher who was able to assess God through philosophy. And the poets say, we are his offspring. He quoted Aratus, who made that statement. He said, therefore, since we are God's offspring, we should not think that the divine being is like gold or silver or stone, an image made by human design and skill. In the past, God overlooked such ignorance, but now he commands all people everywhere to repent. For he has set a day when he will judge the world with justice by the man he has appointed, Jesus Christ. He has given proof of this to everyone by raising him from the dead. When they heard about the resurrection of the dead, some of them sneered, but others said, we want to hear you again on this subject. At that, Paul left the council. Some of the people became followers of Paul and believed. Among them was Dionysius. That's the name of their deity. Dionysius, a member of the Areopagus, also a woman named Damaris, and a number of others. So I wanted to just finish this before I go back to the Mesopotamian history of divinities. So in Mesopotamia, gods began as localized deities controlling specific cities, specific area of people's life. Inanna controls Uruk and Enlil in Nepal. So as their cities are equally going to talk about Ziggurat. Ziggurat is like a pyramid. If you go today is there in ancient Babylon, that is around Iraq. They have the ziggurat. It was a mighty construction that the ancient people believe that it serves as a platform to accessing divinity. So as cities expanded and as empires were formed, because the Sumerian or the Mesopotamian civilization was one of the ancient, the earliest, because it was that civilization that produced Abraham. And don't forget, in Abraham, in Joshua 24, I think 24 verse 4 thereabout, the Bible spoke about Terah, the father of Abraham, and his own fathers who stay on the other side of the river, making and worshiping deities, idol, in the land of Uz. And the land of Uz is in the present day Iraq. So As cities expanded and empires from these deities were organized into a hierarchy based on creation and cosmic dominance. So they begin to organize these deities. Okay, so okay, this one is the one that created this. This is higher. This is lower. I think we equally need to check aspect of Epic of Gilgamesh. From Epic of Gilgamesh, you are going to see even the story of creation. It was captured in Epic of Gilgamesh. So into hierarchy based on creation and cosmic dominance, they possess. These are the qualities of the deities that this worship. And it is equally the qualities that Moses discovered about God. God of the Bible has ability to get angry. God of the Bible also laughs. He has human attributes. Human attributes. He has emotion requiring appeasement through sacrifice, through rituals, and then through the ziggurats. So ancient monolithic structures that we are built as structures of assessing divinities. The Epic of Gilgamesh is like what happened with Noah. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, Gilgamesh, you see the interface between man and spirit, man and divinity. Gilgamesh was a wicked king, and they decided to deal with him by creating a human-like spirit entity to come and dislodge him. But eventually, the man was humanized and made friends with Gilgamesh. And eventually, they set out on different missions. And you see the gods having issues with him. So the gods became angry with the person they created because he failed to do their bidding. They sent a sickness that killed him. And eventually, the Gilgamesh became angry and he began to search for the secret of longevity, because there is this character in the story called Upnapistim. Upnapistim. Upnapistim was the sole survivor of the great flood that destroyed the whole world. Upnapistim survived the flood. You can just see it similar with the book of Genesis story of the deluge. So Upnapistim survived the flood, and eventually Upnapistim was confronted by Gilgamesh. So Gilgamesh told him that he wanted to get the secret to longevity, because Upnapistim was warned by a spirit after the council of gods decided to destroy the world with a flood. And the description of the flood started with darkness. Rain started falling for like 6-7 days. Everywhere was flooded. It was only Upnapistim that escaped the flood in a boat. A deity came to him and warned him that let him destroy his house and build a boat. And Upnapistim built a boat and entered the boat, escaped with his family to a mountain, and later he sent out 3 birds, a dove, another one, and a raven. It was later the raven came back to him, indicating that the water has receded. So Upnapistim came out of the boat on the mountain and offered a sacrifice to the gods, who gathered around it like flies, because they were starving during the flood. As a reward for his faithfulness, Upnapistim and his wife are granted immortality. So he went to Upnapistim to acquire knowledge of what happened in the past. Obnapistim is Noah of the Bible. Noah, do you know how many years Noah lived? Do you know the stories that Noah told his children and his children that witnessed the earlier world that was destroyed? They must have carried information. They must have carried news. And equally, I tend to believe that some of the Nephilims that were existed in that generation were equally able to escape, because we saw them featuring even in the days of David and in the days of the Canaanites. So you see that from the Mesopotamian tradition, the gods appear, their creation. Men were encountered with a world they could not understand. So because of that, they started to raise altars, worship, spirits that govern different aspects of humanity, different aspects of human lives. They begin to assign this spirit to different parts. But the question is, they only worship these things. They have no record to show that this is the day that spirits started coming upon the face of the earth. It is only the Bible that gave us the time and date that men begin to worship God upon the face of the earth. And that was after Seth was born in the book of Genesis, chapter number 4, verse 1. Say, after Seth was born, a man began to call upon the name of the Lord. And don't forget, we don't know what happened to the generation and the race of Cain who killed Abel, because he went and built his own city. He built his own city, and the Bible stopped at a place in Genesis. We don't know what happened to him and his generation before the flood and after the flood. So many things are hazy there. So the history of worshiping spirits, I believe, is connected to two things. Because number one, we don't know the day and the date and the time that Satan and his angels were cast out of heaven. There is no record that his story to show the day, the time, the month, the year they were cast out of heaven. But the book of Revelation 12 told us that Satan was cast out of heaven. And the Bible spoke about the king Pharaoh that was in the river Nile. We don't know how comes the spirit ended up there in river Nile. There are spirits that told Jesus, say, don't cast us out, cast us into the sea, into the pit, and then from the pit they enter the ship, the sea. So you discover that from the ancient perspective, men began to worship deities from this primitive stage. Then we come to the Egyptian civilization. Ancient Egypt, Egyptian gods emerged from deification of the Nile River. The Nile circle, there are seasons that the Nile will go low, famine, drought, and then the sun, the river Nile and the sun. Creation myth frequently revolve around the primal water. They call it Nun, N-U-N, and the sun god Ra. Egyptian deities often embodied both physical objects like the sky and earth, and abstract concepts like truth, justice, and were frequently depicted with animal and human attributes or traits. And don't forget, equally serpent, they worship, and that serpent is the representation of the spirit that lives in the sea. And there was a confrontation between these people and Moses, just the same way that Abraham came out of Sumeria, out of Oz, or of the Chaldeans, Abraham came out of the house of the Chaldeans to the promised land. That was the same way, and it was a civilization infested with so much darkness, so much idol worshiping, so much worshiping of deities. That is the same way that Moses was raised in Egypt, a civilization that was highly rooted in worshiping of different deities. Then we come to the ancient Greece. This one, we're going to spend time to look at what the ancient Greece did. But let us start with the ancient Greece first. Then I will go to the Levant, that is the Middle East, and then come back to the philosophers of um, of the Greek civilization to see how they were able to reach out to God through philosophy. Now, the ancient Greece, the Greek gods originated through personification and complex genealogies. There was a book I read about the gods of Greek, the Greek gods. The genealogy is so much and complex that I am not sure that there's anyone that can be able to follow it sequentially. Describing words like Hesoid, Trigon, Theogony. Hesoid, the universe began from a chaos, a void, chaos, followed by primordial entities like God, that is the earth, and then the Uranus, that is the sky. Their offsprings, the Titans, were overthrown by the Olympians. You can see. So the earth started with chaos, came out of chaos. Then two entities who are deities in their own, in themselves, the earth and the sky, emerged. And then the earth and the sky gave birth to the Titans. Don't forget Titanic. Titans. Now, the Titans later were overthrown by the Olympians. These are gods that came from the Olympus, who live on Mount Olympus and directly interacted with human life directly. So can't you see that the Olympians could be the angels that came to have affairs directly with human beings? Then we go to Homer, Iliad. He wrote, I think, some books that show the story, and in Iliad you see the interface between the gods, the human beings. See Poseidon, you see different gods that they worship. Let's go to the Levant. Tradition of the Canaanites and the ancient Israelites revolve around supreme creator El, often depicted as a benevolent patriarch of a bull. Now don't forget, El was the spirit that met Abraham. There were other spirits, but there is one that came and met Abraham, and that is Elohim, El Shaddai, El Elyon. Elohim encountered Abraham. That is where monotheism started. Monotheism did not entirely, start on its own. It started with a man who encountered a divinity that is above other divinities. That one emerged and had conversation with Abraham. That is where the history of God can, can begin. The journey of God and men in the place of covenant. Not only sacrifice, the covenant. That is where it began. I hope you are following. So, El, often depicted, even the Canaanites that live around there, they equally encounter this El. But because they gave themselves to so many deities, they could not apprehend the totality of El. It was Abraham. So it therefore means that it could be that even the parents of Abraham were able to encounter an aspect of the El, but they couldn't give themselves wholly for the El to use them. So scholars or religion know that these regional mythologies heavily influenced the later historical and cultural development of monotheistic traditions in the same area. So in the primordial pantheon, that is hierarchy of deities, hierarchy of gods, of all cultures and societies, there's always one that is attributed with the qualities and attributes of the Almighty. That is the El. In every culture, there is the unknown God. There is an altar to the unknown. Well, there is always altar to the known. But the issue is that many societies could not apprehend the totality of the El, of the unknown. So they use other known to reach out to the unknown. So it therefore means that in all, there is always one that stands out. So now we're going to move to philosophy. That is where the matter gets hot. Going to move to philosophy. So we have moved from the primordial time. We have moved from, Mesopotamia, Sumeria. We have moved through the poem, hymn to Inanna. We have moved through the epic of Gilgamesh. We have moved through the Sumerian tradition. We have equally dovetailed to Egypt to see that equally it's the same tradition. The same tradition. The same way you have the god of the sun, the moon, the star. In this one, you have here, but here they have Nile, River Nile, which is the source of their spiritual power. Their religious civilization was built around that. And don't forget the pyramids, the same way that we have the ziggurat in Mesopotamia, ancient building structure, mighty, gigantic building were raised to stand as altar to divinities, to Inanna, to deities. That is the same way that we have structures like the pyramids in Egypt to serve as two things. Number one, the dwelling place of spirits, and number two, the gate to divinities. Gates to divinities, altars. Till today, upon the face of the earth, we still have altars. So we have seen the background of how deity started, and I presumed that the worshiping of spirits are similar across cultures, across generations, across civilizations, because of what happened in Genesis chapter 6 and Revelation chapter 12. Angels were cast out of heaven and they fall in different places. As this one lands here, he said, no, this is my own. This one lands here, he said, this is my own. Satan lands on the earth, he said, this is my own. That's what the prince of darkness of this world. So spirits are territorial in nature. So let's move to philosophy. Philosophy. What is philosophy? That is not my concern. The Lord I want to show you is this: philosophy and the movement from polytheism to monotheism. The gradual movement from polytheism to monotheism. So I think I'm going to stop here so that this video will not be too long. I'm going to look out for the part 2 of this teaching, and which I'm going to title Philosophy from Polytheism to Monotheism.